Alright, so chapter 1032 just dropped. I'll be putting my reactions here, so if you aren't caught up, this contains current manga spoilers. The chapter opens up with Marco going full Moltres mode. Is this the first time we've seen fully transformed Marco? Is it weird that the full Phoenix has these goggles on it? It's an interesting design, but I guess in the manga, it'd be a little plain without that. The next panel, we have Apu being opportunistic again, and Yamato isn't having it. But the interesting thing on this page, I don't think I realized from the debut of the 3 numbers before, but is Fuga a failed ancient giant and a smile? Like, does he have the same fruit as the other smile chick with the horse legs? That's pretty powerful to have the body of an ancient giant and to have a devil fruit power. Then in the next part, we have CP0 in pursuit of Robin, but the major thing in this sequence is the Kazembo thing, chasing and also burning the CP0 masked members. This thing needs to be animated. I feel like I'm not quite grasping the terrifying nature of it in the manga. Especially in this panel, it low-key reminds me of those fire bubbles from Mario, but it looks like Fuga and Yamato are going to work together to stop the fire ghost. But since it's being emphasized that it's a fire ghost and Brook is in this panel, maybe Brook is going to be important in taking it out. Which originally, when I was thinking of the CP0 trying to kidnap Robin and Wano, I was thinking like Brook and Jinbei would be able to hold it down and keep CP0 at bay or win, depending on the power levels of the masked CP0 members. But I really like this direction where it's Apu and Drake taking on the CP0. I also can't be the only person who really enjoyed seeing Apu get his whole existence rocked by this masked CP0 guy. Like, thank you, bro. I've been waiting for someone to do that. This kind of makes me low-key like this masked guy, but just going back to the panel before, of course Apu is doing something silly like taking pictures of the CP0 to give to Morgans. Like, if anyone were wondering how they had recent pictures of Kaido on his wanted poster and who took them, now we might know. Apu is probably selling exclusives to Morgans this whole time. But going to the next part, this was kind of funny because I said before that if Apu thinks teaming up with Drake to clean up the mess was going to be easy, he would soon realize that's not the case and CP0 is thinking the exact same thing and that they'd probably clash over it. I didn't think it would happen like this and so soon, but getting into it, this was a really cool detail that I was wondering about and now it's confirmed for me. Earlier I was saying that CP0 definitely has higher ranking than Sword, and that Sword is a known group to CP0. It wouldn't make sense to me if the top intelligence group in the world government were completely unaware of Drake's tie to Sword. Like, maybe they don't know all the members of Sword, but Drake being a captain in Sword and after publicly defecting from his position as Rear Admiral, it wouldn't make sense if they didn't keep tabs on such a powerful person. Also, just wanting to say that there were some other key Admiral positions recently resigning from their positions, and I wonder what that all means if all of them are in Sword. I mean, Sengoku low-key was already running Sword-like operations with Corazon. Then considering Kobe is in Sword, I feel like Garp kinda has to be involved with Sword too. But mainly Aokiji is probably a Sword member who's keeping tabs on Blackbeard, which again makes you wonder who are the Swords members keeping tabs on Big Mom and Shanks. I have more details about the secret organizations in the world government and Marines coming up soon, so I'll save this for another video. But okay, going back to chapter 1032, again, I think this setup is really cool having Drake and Apu take on these masked CP0 members. This will be a good way for us to learn how powerful the CP0 members are because they're going up against 2 members of the worst generation. I don't know what most people think of this matchup, like who is in favor to win here, but I low-key think, and I know at this point I'm sounding biased towards the CP0, but I feel like they might actually low diff both Drake and Apu, unless Drake and Apu have power-ups like Law and Kid that they've been hiding. I have a lot of reasons I'm thinking this, but one of the main things is if Drake and Apu win, cool, that's awesome. We learned that the most powerful looking members of CP0 who are, as Robin said, in a league of their own, are actually not even that scary as a threat. Like, my instincts is telling me that Rob, Lucci, and Kaku would be more of a match for Drake and Apu in this situation, but these masked CP0 members are probably just going to get stalled but ultimately continue their hunt for Robin. If they easily defeat Drake, who is supposed to be a one-man army as he proclaimed, then that shows us how strong these guys are. But also going back to the Rob Lucci part, even though the masked members probably continue onwards here, it makes more sense to me that Lucci is the one that ends up cornering Robin, but this time Robin's response and the crew's reaction to Lucci will be running perpendicular to the events in Water 7 and Enies Lobby's arc. So moving on to the last part of the chapter, Zoro versus King. As much as I was waiting for the progression on this fight, I did not think this is how it'd start. Like, what in the world is King doing here? He literally looks like he's straight out of Angry Birds at this point. I don't even get what's going on in this sequence. He pulls back his latex BDSM suit and it slings forward what exactly? Cause Zoro then says it's like a beam and King says tempura udon. The amount of confusion I have in this scene is immeasurable. Like, what is that nonsense damage? But also Zoro said it was a beam, meaning like he couldn't block it with his sword cause it was like an energy blast, which is also weird cause Zoro blocked Kaido and Big Mom's energy attack, but not this one? And then King says, just like prehistoric times, that's how pterodactyls hunted their prey. No, it's not. It's funny because Queen also had some ridiculous power, but his was because he turned himself into a cyborg. Whereas King, now it seems like he has this whole BDSM suit to shoot face lasers. In any case, the more serious part of the fight comes in the next scenes, where Zoro is visibly struggling and then throws out another wind attack called Kala Sutra Great Dragon Twister. The first thing I just want to note that Kala Sutra is one of 8, 21, or 28 hells in Hinduism, depending on the context, and there are sometimes described to be thousands of different hells. This specific one is a hell allocated for a person who disrespects his parents, elders, ancestors, or Brahmins. So since we do know that King is supposedly Lunarian, which is considered to be an extinct race that Marco is saying might be from the land of gods, I was wondering if King is someone who disrespected his ancestry either by his past actions or current actions. It's definitely going to be interesting once we learn more about the Lunarians. This next part is probably the most important part for me. After all of this fighting, Zoro admits that he hasn't even made King bleed yet. Then he goes in to try to understand King more. Zoro starts wondering what race King is, and says, I don't think I can win without knowing what he is. I think this is really important for all of my theories so far, especially the observation hockey video. Why is it important that Zoro knows what race he is? Like, okay, the races Zoro memes aside, it's kind of interesting. Like, couldn't Zoro just adapt to King's fighting style and learn how to beat him normally? Zoro's saying that knowing his race is important towards winning. That tells me even more so that the mind rope aspect of observation hockey and knowing your enemy is incredibly important towards being able to overpower them. Also, this goes back to the premise of the Zoro video about how Zoro is able to cut anything, but he has to know their spirits. He has to learn their energy to then be able to cut it. So it sounds like because Zoro doesn't know King's race, he hasn't been able to cut King and make him bleed, which is also interesting because Zoro made Kaido bleed. On top of all of this, you need to watch my observation hockey video to understand this next connection. But it's crazy, the timing of this expanded move named Kala Sutra and strings and ropes. If you watch my observation hockey video, you know that I highlighted this really interesting concept of mind ropes, memory strings, and other interesting string properties in One Piece. Going back to Kala Sutra in Buddhism translates to black thread hell. In Marathi, it translates to the thread, line, or course of fate. In Sanskrit, it translates to the thread of time or death, also the cord of the god of death. Like, what if Zoro is able to cut those strings, like I was thinking would be possible in my observation hockey video? The soul cutting theory and thread theory run so much deeper now. Then the chapter ends with a really interesting scene where Enma goes berserk, and it seems to be because of the music playing that Orochi finds out to be Hiyori, which surprised me, but it surprised Orochi even more since the last he knew was that he thought she died. It feels like there's no chance it's actually Hiyori. It doesn't really make sense. But I'm not really sure if this were a fake, how that would even be possible in Wano. It's not like Bon Clay is here, unless it's Kanjuro, but that wouldn't make sense either. The chapters are continuing to be exciting. They keep on engaging me. I'm excited to keep on making more connections in the future and connecting with you all on the next Parvision.